This calls to order the May 23rd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. First item of business is approval of minutes from meeting held on April 25th, 2022. Are there any comments or discussion on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Minutes or motion passes. Next item of business is item 2, old business. There is none. Moving on, item 3, new business. Item A, site plan for addition exception request for 5942 Howe Drive, Fairway, Kansas, as submitted by Lonnie Shanks of JC Architects on behalf of Brian and Liz Wallace, property owners. Basil, will you please read your staff report?
Yes, so the background, the applicant submitted the application, and they were requesting an exception for the window and door north facade area. So they're at 8.14%, and the code requires 15%. Staff is not opposed to the exception.
All right.
Are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a reason, I noticed, they have that 8.4, but then they also have where they figured it with the premium port, and it's like 11.8 there. Was there a reason they didn't use that?
No, there's no reason. I mean, they're still needing the exception.
Well, right, but it's
Yeah.
not as big an ask if it's almost 12. Yeah, go to the left.
Oh, we'll keep.
Isn't this the shot you
Oh,
want?
there you go.
Yep.
Okay, no, there you are. Go back. Shut it back there.
No,
Okay.
no, no.
Just size it smaller.
Oh,
There's a
size.
little table over on the left.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
It says with the screened-in porch, it's 11.9. So that's still part of that side
See the
elevation.
screen
Yeah.
porch on here. Where's the screen porch on that side?
Well, they didn't show this.
They didn't show, yeah.
That was some architectural trick. But they show it on the other page, and it's, it's 50% glass, so. Or
Well, it's screen, so would you consider that?
Yeah, it would
Yeah,
be.
We would even consider like a false window.
okay.
So
That's right.
So is that not visible from this shot?
they just didn't show it.
They didn't show it.
Maybe the sheet wasn't big enough.
The architect here?
Yeah, I can address that when you're ready.
And I know we have the 15% rule. If it's an existing part of the house, like this garage is existing, does that qualify under the?
Well, they can use only the addition, or they can use the entire facade. So if the existing doesn't meet, but the new meets, then they're fine. So that's their option. In some cases, they have more on the existing and they're not adding to the new,
Right.
so they can use the entire facade.
Well, I'm sure their architect can address it, but it seemed like it might have been better to just use the new. It wouldn't have been an issue with it. Anyway.
okay. Any other questions for staff before we speak with the applicant? I just would add one comment, or I guess question first. Have you seen all the plans, or is this just the set you've seen? Have you seen any structural drawings yet?
This is just the set.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you guys approve, then they'll submit the structural.
So I would want to make sure that you get a chance to review the structural drawings, because it looks like the existing structure will be utilized to support this new addition.
That's
And we want to
right.
make sure that the existing foundation has been evaluated. Okay, would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address for the record?
Hi, Philip Crum. My address is 8204 Rosewood Lane, Prairie Village, Kansas, 66208.
Commissioner Denton, did you want to rephrase your question?
So originally, conceptually, when we were drawing this, the
We'll do you want to do comments, questions first and then discussion? Or-
Well, I guess you're double in the garage door, that, I mean,
Yeah, I can show you. You have the overhead?
We did, I'm sorry, we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
need.
Okay, well, I've got 8 copies if you guys.
Okay, I'll pass them out. Now that we're doing electronic, we're supposed to have all this stuff ahead of time. We're not using that.
did they not run any windows on the second floor out of the bedrooms?
They're on the front and back, the windows. On the side, so you can see where I bubbled a 30 by 40 window on the second floor. That's really based on roof lines that are current and the way it's drawn. That's really the only place I could get a second floor window.
New structures on the back of the house and everything else.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this now. So that,
Oh, can I make sure,
that's
do we have our
what's
mics
existing.
on?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so,
This is what is existing. On the plans, it's gray, but it doesn't show up on.
Okay.
So that entire garage elevation where the window is, not where the door is existing. And then there's on that you can see past some new addition where you can see more addition. It's existing.
everything he needed.
Are there other questions for the applicant?
So if you were to use the screen on the north elevation in the existing version, does that get you to the number?
On the way it's drawn originally,
Yeah.
if I use the screen import, it gets me to 11.9. And that screen import is a 100% go now, so that will be inserted onto the drawings we submit, just like this one.
Okay, thank you. I guess, from my opinion, there's a lot of different setbacks and relief on the wall itself, and a lot of the reasons why we have the window opening requirement is to prevent the neighbors from looking out the window and just seeing one plane. So I wouldn't be opposed to the original proposed design, but I'm interested in you guys' comments.
Well, I think I would agree with you too. I mean, 11.8 is pretty close, and I think I like with the screen porch addition, I think I like that better than the poking a little window in on the upper level. And like you said, it's stepped back in several locations, which is part of why we did that 15% window opening. So I wouldn't have a problem just going with the original plans rather than making him futz around with these other little doors and windows.
I agree. I think the new stuff is, even from the street, you probably won't even be able to see it very well anyway, because it's behind the house. So I think it's okay. Would agree.
I would agree as well. It's got enough differentiation that, plus we're dealing with existing conditions, so.
Okay, if we're in agreement, does someone want to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the plans for 8204 Rosewood Lane as submitted and with staff recommendations for the original submittal,
And
not the
approve,
modified,
approve the exception?
and approve the exception for fewer than 15% windows.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
I guess just a question, was it Rosewood Lane or was it Howard Drive? 5942?
Oh, in the motion.
Yeah.
Oh, I gave the architect's address, I'm sorry. Well, he can add on to there too.
Okay, are we okay then? All right, moving on. Item B, site plan for solar energy system and signage including deviation for the number of signs at 4034 Shawnee Mission Parkway, Fairway, Kansas, as submitted by Jeff Brent of McBrenty LLC, property owner. Basil, will you please read your staff report?
So the applicant requested to install roof-mounted solar panel, and regarding the sign, council did reach out to us, and it is considered a government sign, not yard sign. So a permit is not required for that, but they have to meet the requirements for that sign. So our discussion as staff, we thought it's considered a yard sign, but it is a government sign.
So you don't need approval from us, is what you're saying?
For the signage, but they have to meet the requirements. So right now, the requirement, they have to be at 1 square foot, and right now he's showing 12 by 18-inch signs.
So we need to approve an exception then?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Understood.
just to clarify too, if it would be governed by the manual and uniform traffic control devices. So it would be, I don't know if they have a size limitation or not in that manual, but it would need to comply with those. And so they have to, a site plan is required for any exterior alterations in this district anyway. So you have to approve either way. But I'm not seeing that there's a deviation. I would make sure that because I'm not aware of what the manual and uniform traffic control device requirement is, but that would need to be a condition, that it would need to comply with any maximum there, or else they'd have to come back and seek an exception.
In the packet, they reference similar signage out here in front of the city hall. Does that also comply with the same requirements, or is that a separate category?
I would assume so. I hope so.
But the city can exempt itself from the rules.
That's true too.
So staff is, again, not opposed to
Okay.
the request.
So what is this?
That's something that just came from the applicant.
On the solar
Panels.
On the solar panels, they're still working out the configuration, so he just brought an updated one. And Dr. Brent can certainly address it further, but he just handed that out.
Okay.
So is the applicant here? Would you like to come up and walk us through this layout?
Which question I'm asking about the signs or about the
The solar panel right now.
So it's just a slight difference from the one I handed out. We were trying to follow the roof lines with the panels so it wasn't so jaggedy. It's an unusual shaped roof, and if we just use standard size panels, we would end up with either just a rectangular mass or very jagged. So we were looking at trying to do I think there was a version in there with the triangles. We were going to water jet cut them to fill in the gaps to make it a perfectly smooth, mirror image of the roof, but shrunk down a little bit. But as we were testing those, we can make very nice cuts, but as those tapered edges were just going to get too weak. So we decided what I handed out now is just a compromise where we split some panels lengthwise to reduce the step-offs, and then we fill in the gaps at the end like we did on the blue there to make it a solid straight line. Otherwise, along the right-hand side of the picture, it would be going like this with it wouldn't be a straight line.
Isn't that the way it is?
There's slight jaggies, but if I showed only full panels, if you mentally subtract all the blue panels that are in there, it would be very offset, and it wouldn't follow the contour of the roof at all. But we had our countertop fabricators use their water jet and cut them in half, and so we can fill in and to make it like you have there. I'm sorry that I didn't have a different color to clearly show which ones are false panels and which ones are full panels, but the long skinny ones are half panels. And I was also waiting on engineering for snow loads and things like that, so that's why that was kind of in process in this month since I turned in the paperwork. And then this is an upgraded snow fence at the bottom of it, that's not unique to solar panels. I mean, the metal roof, snow slides off of that as well, but so we're trying to upgrade that at the same time for safety.
So will this be enough solar panels to provide all the energy you guys need?
About 70%. So, it exceeds it a little bit during some sunny days, supposedly, at least according to their computer models. Of course, they are salesmen, but they have very fancy software. And then, so we'd push back some during the day and use some back at night. And then, of course, in the winter, it would be a lower percentage. But we'd be able to say that we're providing more than half of our power with sunshine. So I think that's a good thing to be able to say.
Looks like you're making a heroic effort here.
Well, it is. It's an investment, and we're finally to a point where we're able to do that. There's some tax credits that expired this year. Accelerated depreciation bonus. It's the time to do it. And we've actually had a few patients in our reviews say, 2 or 3, I mean, it's not a huge number, they said, why don't you put solar panels on this building? I mean, it's a very contemporary looking building. But I think with this extra step of trying to blend it a little bit better, we can make it more attractive as well.
I thought your original filling in all those little steps was really kind of a above and beyond step, but I guess it just doesn't work out.
It is. Well, and we're still doing something. I mean, nobody sacrifices panels just to fill them in, but it's a compromise.
Right.
I was just afraid that long skinny edge,
Yeah.
with some ice on it.
Yeah, a
might
maintenance
crack.
issue. Do you mind sharing what kind of a payback? I mean, how many years do you think this would?
Well, so I mean, if you just ballpark numbers, if you call it 100%, if you call it a $100,000 system, 26% tax credit, so you're paid 26% the first year. Bonus depreciation, you can depreciate the whole thing as a business expense year 1. So accountants say that's about a 25% bonus, so it's about 50% paid off year 1, year 2. So then that leaves 50%, makes about $7,000 of electricity a year, so it pays back in under 10 years. And then it's still under warranty for the next 15 after that.
I guess being the business is the key point there, because you can write so much of it off.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
Solar, residential payback is much more difficult, especially with all these fairway trees.
Yeah, well, I was just curious about that. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be happy to share a proposal with you if you're interested, but
Well, that's too much detail, but
yeah.
Has anybody,
It's slower on residential.
has anybody looked at sun reflecting off onto Shawnee Mission Parkway?
The sun is south, like our metal, our metal screen wall that faces Shawnee Mission Parkway, that's pretty south, so the sun's always that direction. We don't have the ideal, like if our roof is kind of like this and the sun is like where you are and the sunscreen is like where you are. I mean, our system would be more efficient if that roof was facing south, but it's not. So, I mean, our existing metal sun wall we looked at, that would be the biggest risk because the sun is like you and bouncing back, and that hasn't been a problem to date that I've heard of.
Are these fixed panels, or are they going to rotate? Okay.
They're fixed. They're uniformly black, no frame. I was going to try to bring one, but I couldn't get it in time. But I tried to show a picture and a link to the product. So the black goes all the way to the edge. They're not those kind of like gray, shiny ones that look like cheap toys from the 80s. I mean, they're very.
is this the picture?
Yeah, just a big piece of black. I know it doesn't print well. I tried to include the web link so you could see a photo online, but yeah.
And are they clipped onto the ribs of the standing seam?
Yeah. So that was the whole goal of the standing seam. They have these sleek little mounts. I don't know the exact number of inches, but it's somewhere. I mean, the standing seams are about 2 inches, and so just like 2 or 3 inches above that, it'll be there. The wiring will be behind it, and of course we want it to look good. You'll see that one detail was just that we're going to use a piece of roofing material to conceal the wiring. It's only in that 3-foot gap at the top of this mass, like as it approaches the ridge. We just have to go up just like this far, wrapped in matching metal, and then we'll go through the roof and then down, doing the same detail on the other side to the panels on the other side, and then it'll go down and join the utilities.
I'm assuming they have engineers that have done calculations on the loading and then also the uplift from wind. Is that, it's not going to distort your metal roof and cause damages there?
I hope not. I mean, it's a pre-bought engineered system that we're buying from somebody who just does this. I mean, you even have to tell them which brand of metal roof you have so they get the right clamps. They have a certain number of torque you have to clamp. You're supposed to torque each one with a torque wrench. So
well, yeah, you wouldn't want to see that sailing off across Shawnee Mission Parkway.
No. Hopefully the snow cars would catch it, but no. We had the engineers to run the snow loads too. They still had our plans from just a few years ago, so it was not too difficult for them to just make sure. Because usually you keep your snow guard back like above the wall, not on your cold roof, but I mean, they said even if all the snow was on that front edge of the roof, we're still within spec on everything. But we're holding it back. Basically, there's a 4-foot zone at the edge of the panels where snow can fall off, accumulate, and then get behind the.
Because it seems
Snow
like with
guard.
those smooth-faced panels like that, all butted together, the snow would probably just slide right off almost immediately, but
Yeah, but for safety, you don't want it to. You want it to.
no, you don't
detain
want it all.
Yeah, but our current metal roof is like that too. It's also smooth and insulated, so it.
But you've got those little tabs that stick up.
Yeah, I know, and I wonder. I don't think those do enough. I want to upgrade this at that point. I'm hoping we can remove those, but I'm not sure.
Any other questions?
Am I addressing the parking question as well, or were there questions on that? Or?
Do we have questions on the parking?
I mean, 'cause it's I'll come back if it looks like it's not going well or something, because I mean that's a mandatory business thing we need. I mean, people are parking in our spots, and we can't grow.
Didn't you say that that's part of some of their code? I mean, or do we have to?
So on private property, it's a government. I don't even understand that.
Yeah, I will defer to our zoning council because that's where
Yeah.
staff got a little off on that.
So traffic control devices and things that protect private property rights, like the no parking unless you're a patron of this business, those are considered government signs, and you can't, because this is how you instruct people where they can park, or instruct people who are not allowed. So yes, it's considered government signs, and there's a manual on uniform traffic control devices that the Kansas Secretary of Transportation has approved, and so it would just need to comply with whatever requirements are identified in that manual for the size.
And does that differ based on when you're actually at a parking spot versus a lot entrance, for example?
It may.
I'm just wondering because, I feel like you see signs about the towing information and stuff. I don't know if you're required to post that if you're using a certain towing company or whatnot, or I don't know. And like I said, we have the challenge where we're not just funneling past a small entrance where you can have obvious signage. Half of our parking spots are directly open to China Mission Parkway, so people wouldn't see the sign until they pulled into a spot. And I wanted to minimize it, so I didn't know if I could get by with every 3 spots. I think that's how I submitted it. I'm hoping I didn't have to do every 2 spots. I mean, if people are parking in that middle spot, can they see a sign on either side of them? But I don't really want
So are you
more signs
saying
than we need.
that's not an issue we deal with? So does he have to go to the state then to get?
No,
approved?
it is subject to planning commission approval because of the district that it's in, being a B1. So the planning commission will have to approve site plans for any change. That's not routine maintenance. But this falls under the site plan review procedures.
And we have to review because it's exceeding the allowable square footage, so we have to approve or deny there'll be additional signage that exceeds the requirement.
So we could say we approve the concept, but he has to follow the government rules as far as how big the signs are and where they're
Comply with the
placed.
manual of uniform traffic
so-
control devices, and that would specify, that's basically, it's just to standardize traffic control, turning, street signs, the sizes of signs should be addressed in there as well, so it may not necessarily be 1 square foot. That's for signs that aren't covered by some other code. And the language of the conditions includes other incorporated codes. Since there are references to the manual on uniform traffic control devices, I don't think you need to specifically call that out in any motion. It would be covered already in the condition that's in the staff report.
And I would think that this layout was done by a sign company, wasn't it? Yes. Who does that for a living, so I would think that they would be aware of whatever these government parking lot standards are. And yeah,
They actually submitted it to me first on making the lot entry one bigger, but I shrunk it down when I submitted it to.
Is there any concern that they're not going to be able to read the U-turn piece? Because if you're in the middle of a U-turn.
Well, it's not the U-turn. If anyone has any ideas, please share them with me sometime, anytime. But people whip through that lot, to turn around. I don't know why so many people are turning onto Buena Vista and then deciding they want to go the other way. Did they miss the Einsteins? Are they trying to park across the street? Now they're going to do it even more because across the street, when they redo it, there's only going to be parallel spots. So people are going to be coming off China Mission Parkway and wanting to parallel park on that other side. Mm-hmm. So they turn into our lot, whip through, they've already hit one of our staff's cars. And then because you're backing out, you see there's no one around you, and you're not paying attention to the cars coming in at 25 miles an hour, just sailing through the lot. So, I mean, I almost need to divide it into two some way, but I would lose a parking spot, just to have, or more, just to have the ability to pull into those spots. But yes, I am concerned. They actually submitted that one as a larger sign first, just because there were some more words on there, but I was trying to, I don't even think it'll probably stop anyone, but I wanted to say, quit turning around in our lot. I mean, is the intent there, because people do it constantly, and people are trying to back in and out, and it's not safe.
Maybe you need a speed bump.
Yeah.
City can get you a deal on speed
Yeah,
bump.
exactly. Yeah, like those severe tire damage.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
I just did a quick search online for the manual of uniform traffic control devices and size of signs, like the no parking signs in Kansas, and it's typically 12 by 18.
Which is what we have here.
That was their standard size they gave me. It seems like what I parked out.
Yeah, I would
my
think a
out
sign
there.
company would know what the
Yeah.
rules were.
Well, and like I said, they did submit the lot entry one as a larger size. I guess I'd have to find out if that is something, a different rule or not, because with all those, I am putting more information on there. It would be nice if that was maybe one size bigger, but I didn't really want to make it look bigger, so.
Okay, so we're reviewing two things. We're reviewing the approval of the solar panels, and we are, the request is to approve further approval of signage, so two different items. So is there any discussion on the solar panels?
I like it. I think it'll be out there and people will notice it, and it looks good. I mean, it's not as good as it was smooth down the edge, but this could be a little more dramatic. And the signage, as far as that goes, I think it sounds like it's a necessary evil. I'm sure they'd rather not do it, but I can see their problems. I mean, I figured they'd have problems with this from the day they did it, with right across from all those apartments and that stuff. So I'm in favor of it.
Any other comments, or someone want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the solar panels and signage for 4034 Shawnee Mission Parkway.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Next item of business, I guess real quick question. Do we do all three of these individually? Is that how that,
I'd recommend separate motions,
okay.
but you can
We could
consider all
discuss
of them as a package, yes.
Okay. So we'll discuss item C, final development plan for 4200, 4210, 4220 Shawnee Mission Parkway and parcel GF251209-3020, submitted by Henry Clover of Clover Architects on behalf of MREM Fairway Property LLC, MREM Fairway Property Retail LLC, and MREM Fairway Parking LLC. Item D, final site plan 4210, 4220 Shawnee Mission Parkway and parcel GF251209-3020, submitted by Henry Clover of Clover Architects on behalf of MREM Fairway Property LLC and MREM Fairway Parking LLC. And then item E, the plat for 4210, 4220 Shawnee Mission Parkway and parcel GF251209-3020, submitted by Henry Clover of Clover Architects on behalf of MREM Fairway Property LLC, MREM Fairway Property Retail LLC, and MREM Fairway Parking LLC. All right, here's that part.
Could you repeat
I'll have my staff, no. The applicant just requested, there were some changes from the prelim application. He did send a statement of the changes, so it's attached in the report. Staff, for the first two items, the final development and the final site plan is, we'll defer to the PC recommendation. As far as the prelim and the final plat, staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? I have a question for the applicant if they want to come forward. And please state your name and address for the record.
Henry Clover, Klover, 8813 Penrose Lane, Suite 400, Lenexa, Kansas.
Thank you. In regards to the plan, the site plan, when we reviewed the preliminary plan, we discussed the lighting study as well as traffic evaluation. We did approve the preliminary plan, but we asked you guys to consider that and include that in your final submittal, at least updating us on what investigation you'd performed and determined. And I was wondering if you had an update on that.
I do believe that the traffic memo was submitted initially, and it showed that the rate went down from what was in the office before.
Okay, did we
So
receive
that was
that?
submitted.
That was with the
Preliminary,
I mean,
yes.
they did that shorter traffic study that was submitted.
I thought that was with
But
the.
I think you guys wanted more info regarding, I think staff said to do a traffic study will take a few years to do that. So,
Yeah, with the
That's-
KDOT,
Sure.
it takes months, up to a couple years, and so there was not gonna be any way to get a updated study. We had one that was, I think, just a few years old, and also, when they initially came through with the preliminary plans, we were still in COVID. People weren't going to work, kids weren't attending school, and that all impacted it. It was like, even if you did a study and say they were able to get to it sooner, would it actually be relevant?
Okay, but in terms of the lighting study then?
I don't believe that we do have a site lighting plan in here. But I guess I'd ask the question of what you're referring to as a lighting study. Is it
Well,
like a dark sky or just a photometric or?
Yeah, that's what we've spoken of, as a photometric. We have concerns about the light from this development, how it's directed across Shawnee Mission Parkway into like the backyards of those homes. We had the same discussion whenever they brought the development forward for the Starbucks. So we just want to make sure that we've taken care of that so our neighbors aren't seeing additional light pollution.
There will be no, I mean, other than the lights in the windows and the lights on the decks, those are the only lights that will be on the building other than the ground lighting and stuff like that. There isn't any, with the exception of a drive lane, there is no lighting that would be what I would consider to be light pollution. They're all going to be controlled. They're not going to be shining out. I mean, you'll have a building that has lights, like there's a building there today that has lights. But there's no, and I understand what you're talking about because the power company decided in their infinite wisdom to put two big lights on top of the powers that's down in the valley from where I live that shines into my bedroom from a quarter mile away. So yes, I do understand that. But what we're talking here is just windows and lighting. There's no lighting on the building other than lights underneath the canopy and things like that for walkway lights and things like that. But there's no lights on the building that would be shining out.
Okay, and the
So-
street lights are, there
They're
are
existing,
parking street,
yes.
parking
And
lights?
they will match what was already done for, because the only modification to the roadway is just for the entrance drive that's coming in. The road across the south side is still the same, and the road going by Starbucks is basically still the same. We're just tying into it.
Okay.
So there's no real building lights, there's not big lights on the side of the building shining out for security or anything like that. Because this is also residential as well. And so it's all very low key.
You do have an elevation of a light, looks like it's on a pole.
Those are the lights on the roadway, on the sheet.
On L1
Yes,
0.
yes, those are the roadway lights.
And what, they go along, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So those are along, in front of the building there?
Yes, they're the drive lanes. And they're low and down lights as well. They're light controlled, they're LEDs nowadays. That's the beauty with LEDs is each of those diodes point a certain direction.
Right.
So you can
Yeah,
actually
they
do a
didn't
lot
look
more
like those would
control
be a
than
problem.
you used to be able to do. Well, I actually had a presentation, so.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's have it.
Pardon?
Let's have it.
Let me
Let's have
pull
it.
it up.
Let her pull it up. Obviously, I introduced myself, and we're here today to present to you the final development plan, final site plan, and the final plat. With me as well today is also Brendan O'Leary, who's with EPC, William Buck, who's with BHC, who's a civil engineer, if you should have any questions, and Eric Eisler with my office, and of course, you're stuck with me as well. So, but can you turn to the next sheet? Obviously, you probably don't need to know this. This is the location of the project site with Shawnee Mission Parkway on the south, the existing Starbucks building and retail on the east, 55th Street on the top, on the north side, and then the KU parking lot and the Haas-Wilkeson building to the west. That's just to orient it to you, which I'm sure you all know where it is. I will go through a whole series of minor changes, and what I did was I put a chart in there because there was some confusion initially on the part that, for example, that it said the total project area of 222,000 versus 201,000. And the difference there is the fact that that was the preliminary plan for both the second lot as well as the two lots. But there also turned out to be some differences because when we did this initially, it was based on an Ames survey that the owner had, and now the survey is telling us there's a few things that are different. So track 1 was obviously very close. It's 196,405 versus 196,138. The difference is in track 2, which is the parking lot that is to the west. That was about 8,800 square foot difference. So it was turned out that lot was 35,000 square feet versus the 26,000 square feet. So there's a total lot area of 222 on the preliminary, 231,000 on the final. Both of those were moving the future lot. So the current lot was 193,000 versus today 201,000. So I wanted to explain that to you because we didn't do a very good job between the preliminary and the final of coordinating it. And it confuses staff, rightly so, and so I basically put it together to make sure we could understand it. And feel free to ask any questions as you go through. So the biggest thing that happened, though, was between the time that you saw us last and the final development plan, the owners did engage an outside consultant out of Texas, so we went and reviewed several properties. And the whole purpose was to look at what the needs are, what the size of units, amenities, weird things like types of chairs that you can get out of. All of the units are going to have showers with seats in them and not necessarily bathtubs. If there's a second one, they would be bathtubs. And so there were a lot of things like that and wanting tables. So all the units were worked on. The biggest thing that came up from it, too, though, was that they determined that for the market study they did, and they studied where people would be coming from, they determined that they didn't want studios, they didn't want smaller units. So we ended up increasing the size of the units and didn't increase the square footage. You'll notice there's almost like 100 square feet difference between the two. What we did was we changed them from a little bit bigger units. We got rid of the smaller units, the studios. We reduced the number of the A2s or A1s exactly to create a pattern they felt was more advantageous to the community and making sure the units had the items that they want in them. Now, what that necessarily did is it changed some of the units, it changed some of the shapes and sizes, so that we had to kind of manipulate the space. And we ended up with nicer corner units. The very end cap is almost a penthouse all the way across the corner on the very northeast corner. It's a really nice unit that goes all the way across. So in doing that, it changed the configuration, which meant we had to adjust and make sure that we, and I've got blow-ups of the courtyards coming up next, so appreciate you doing that, but you didn't have to.
Sorry.
So, but, Ron Denton had asked me too where things were located too, so to explain, and I don't really have a pointer, but the beige area you see is all the amenity area that's going to be on the upper level. The leasing office will be on the first level. You'll come in. The parking deck you enter in the center, and what you're seeing there is actually the pool is actually 2 levels above the parking deck. There's 2 levels of parking deck there, and that's actually elevated. And the reason for that is because we've got almost a 30-foot grade change from one corner to the other. He asked me to locate the stairs. So there's an elevator and stair that's in the upper right corner, an elevator stair in the lower left corner, and then you can see there's a stair that's on the very back side, which is by the parking lot. And then we have an elevator dead middle, and then in the upper right corner where it pivots right as it goes by the Starbucks is where there's a freight elevator as well, which can be used for pedestrians as well. And the trash and deliveries all in that area. Other items that happened to the site plan that were minor was we did have a stair that was coming from 55th Street and walking all the way around it. And we talked to staff and we thought better of that because there's security issues and having a parking lot there and having people pass through there. So we're going to gate it up, fence it off, and make it so they can, the residents could get back in that area, but we're going to keep the general public out of there. We didn't think it was a good idea to make it a pass-through. And also it'd be a good area for people to be able to walk their dogs. But we do have an exit stair there, so we do have a immediate path of egress to get in and around there. The original plan also took the path of egress straight down along the Maxwell Wilkerson wall area. And we didn't think that was a good idea for a couple of reasons. One, because that eventually, hopefully, will not be a pad that we control anymore. Two, it wasn't a direct access to the people who we want to use that coming out of the building and being able to walk. And that was kind of the dog park area. That would be the biggest area for people to be able to take their dogs. And we're talking about doing, dog washes in the garage area as well, that they would have access to.
You mentioned dog park. Is that triangle-shaped area above your future expansion area? Is that the dog park?
Yeah, that can be used as it, but there's also areas that the residents can get to directly. For example, they'll be fenced in.
I mean, will that be dedicated?
Security is a big deal for these type of projects. So,
on the plans, you've called that area a park. But is that like dedicated to this project, or could it someday be incorporated into this other future development?
No, the path site is going to stand on its own, and it's the area that would be designated to them, which is the 0.677 acres. So that would be for us to use for picnic tables or whatever we feel like. So the other, I think there was one other item that we changed. Oh, we did add one of the item that was requested is at the porte cochere. We widened it to make sure there was a couple stops so people could drop off. We made sure that there's a change in texture there, so we're going to do decorative paving there as well. So those are the major changes other than just the configuration. Let's go to the next one. And this one is describes obviously the square footage. The original square footage was 193,000, 116,000 square feet. Our current residential unit is 103,106. There was a change in the amenity, and you'll see there's a change of that in the common area as well. But you'll also see there's an adjustment down in the parking garage, and that's because then we took things out like the amenities such as the trash and the dock, and there's some of the corners we're using in the garage for access to the elevator and deliveries and package storage. So those are all just adjustments. We had at the time a 15,000 square feet contingency, which we're not using either time. So you take it out, there's a net of 370,000 original, and now we're at 368,841. So there's very little adjustments there in terms of the gross square footage. Net, it's only 1,232 square feet difference. The other thing that came up was building setbacks, and we worked real hard to make sure we stayed within 2 feet of those. But the building is different. I mean, there's different locations of balconies, there's different locations of entries and that sort of thing. But this is all a very normal process for us, starting from a preliminary a year ago and working with consultants to try and figure out exactly how the building needed to be put together and built. Next slide, please. These show you the courtyards, and these have been developed considerably since then. The top is the 2 courtyards along 55th Street, and you can see a little bit better too where the elevators and the stairs are. At the time, and you can see the white areas where the paths come out. There was requests for additional access points directly to, and so there's a stair in the middle wing that'll go directly out to the sidewalk. There's a corridor all the way to the left that'll go directly to the sidewalk. And then in the middle of the 2 courtyards, there's also direct access to the courtyards. They've been developed. The sidewalk along 55th Street goes up dramatically. So when you start on the corner, you're down. As you walk up the hill, the first courtyard is actually above you a little bit. You have to walk up a set of steps to get to it. There'll be a series of stepped walls and terracing and fencing there. As you get to the center, obviously the stair can get you up and down to wherever you need to get to. And then when you get to the west courtyard, it's actually below you a little bit, so you have to go down a few feet to get into the courtyard. So it's reversed. And the first one, it's a little bit elevated. The second one's a little bit reversed. I'll explain in a little bit. We also had some grading issues. The biggest issue we had is that from the preliminary to the final, there was a pretty good difference in what we thought things were. So, for example, entering the garage, we thought we were at a 924 grade. We're actually at a 921. On this backside, we thought we were at a 948. It's actually at a 950. So the issue is we still had to get from one point to the other because this thing continues all the way around. And today we actually have a 2-foot step that we step up in the building right about a quarter of the way into the west wing because we had to get that out of the ground. And we also had to be able to get drainage because it's got pipes and drains, but we also had to get an overflow out that headed to the east. So we actually picked it up so we could make sure we could get water out and around the corner. So there's all those little things of how do you make this thing real and how do you make it work. And walking around the building. So the next one, the courtyards, I still need to talk about those. The other advantage it had, because it dropped a little bit, was we have dropped the amenity area and it'll ramp up around it so we can get ourselves some more height, but it also has a terraced and a infinity edge waterfall along the edge of the pool, because the pool, you'll step up to get to the next level. So it's very, very cool. It'll have a swim-up bar on the right. The little individual areas for people to gather. One thing we found in working with other projects on this demographics is people like to be seen, they like to be together, but they also like to have a little bit of separation. So we're creating a lot of little niches and places for people to gather and sit, both inside the building and in the courtyards. The lower right courtyard is the active courtyard. It will have the fitness facing it and the yoga, and the front deck will be used for yoga. The next courtyard to the west is intended to be our quiet courtyard, more about meditation and being able to walk. We did set up a deliberate path so people can walk through and around. That is one level lower. So the east courtyard is a level or a story above the left courtyard or the west courtyard. So people will walk down steps to get to that. It's designed to have the community garden in it. There'll be arbors and places for people to sit. And again, along the front, we created little niches for people to be able to sit and be part of the path, but not necessarily be in the path. Does that make sense? Next. We also had an error in the initial because we thought the initial pervious area was 36,000 on the preliminary. It turned out to be 51. That was just an error in calculating items or scanning it or missing it. There is still a net positive of 13,000 square feet, and the stormwater study has been done, and the stormwater study shows that everything is still going to function. There's no issues. So we are on the positive side with the pervious. Next, please. And this is to show you the biggest difference. Obviously, we went to great lengths to try and make sure with the units that the units still created that character element. You know, the original kind of design concept was kind of the French country with the mansards and the screened-in porches, and so all of those things are there. The difference between these two is you can see that the difference. We were restricted by the microwave corridor. So there was a 986.1 that we couldn't exceed, and our initial was a 985. Currently it's at 985.6, or 8 inches. But the difference is, you can see the lower line. That's where we thought the grade was getting into the garage. And it's not there. It turns out that when we did the actual survey, it dropped a few feet, so there's a 3-foot difference there. Now the difficulty is actually where it comes in is the next sheet. Now, there are slight differences between these two, but we tried really hard to make sure we kept all the character elements, and it just has to do with where patios and porches and entrances, and we created new units that were bigger as well. So the next sheet would show you the elevation.
Can I ask you a question about
this?
that?
Yes, sir.
You've got, like on the corners, it kind of looks like you have screened-in rooms.
And screened-in porches.
huge window walls behind it?
Yeah, there's going to be big open sliders so they can open them up and have a kind of indoor-outdoor environment.
Are those the premier units for the people coming out of Mission Hills?
Any corner is a premier unit because they're the ones that have the most, they're usually larger because they're on the end and they have more character, and there's different types, but the best one is going to be on the very back corner. On that very back corner, it spans the entire width. And it's a real nice unit. And it has 2 decks. And what we did in the renderings is those are screened-in porches, and then they're on an angle, and then there'll be a big biparting doors that they can open up and kind of have an indoor-outdoor environment. And this is something we've never done before, too. The client's never done this before either. This is brand new, first time ever. So this is where it got a little more exciting because the issue is when we did this, we said, okay, our finished floor on that third level is at 946. We had to get all the way around to the backside, which we thought was 48. Well, it was 50. So if you see the line where it says building step, that's out of the microwave corridor. We had to pick that up 2 feet. Basically, it's the same height. We just had to pick it up because otherwise we would have been 4 feet below the grade back there. And right now it's a little bit below the grade, and it's an acceptable level for us to deal with because what it does is anything in the patio actually goes around the corner. But the first 2 residents on the lower will be, when they sit down, the grade will be about here, which we've done that before too, and it's a nice detail. But that's the biggest difference is we had to come around the corner and make sure we could get back out of the ground, and this all has to do with just the reality of where the grades are. So it's difficult to understand, so hopefully that helps.
Can you go back one slide? I have another
Of course.
question. Like the character, you've got a lot of sloping roofs and that kind of thing, but then you introduce these 2 arched, one on each side, the white elements.
There's actually...
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, and those were there in the preliminary. They're still there.
But does that pick up the style that you were looking for?
Oh yeah, because if you look, we're doing the traditional French mansard connection that comes through the mansard roof above it. So you've got arches there. You've got the arch on top.
I guess you just can't see the arched roof part behind.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to see, but that's actually got a metal roof on it and is projected out of the mansard that's behind it. So, and it's the interplay of the different types of roofs that are there, and that's what we tried real hard. And when you're switching floor plans around, you have to try and make sure you still can keep the exterior architecture true, and that was probably our biggest challenge. Okay. We've kept, obviously on the very left side is where it's coming up the hill so dramatically. The one thing I also didn't mention in the site plan, in addition on the civil, but we didn't show it, is in that center of the next courtyard, there's actually a bench and a seating area on the sidewalk coming through. You might go back a couple plans too, Kim, because it shows pretty well in the overall. It's right there. Go up a little bit. Those are the existing trees that are there. And that was one of the other biggest issues we had too, is if we started, there's a big hill there and there's a big hump there. And we could have easily taken it down and gotten ourselves in very good shape, but that would not work without killing the trees. And so all of this effort was to get the sidewalk above the tree, to make sure we stayed above the trees and not getting into their root system. And so the big intent was to make sure that we kept things basically where they were and kept up from there. So that was another thing that was very important to us too. And we know when we met with staff, there's fines taking out these trees. So, and obviously they're very healthy and strong trees, so we don't want to mess with them. But in the center of that one courtyard, right in the middle of those trees, which you can't see, is a bench and seating area that shows on civil as a pedestrian respite once they get up to the top of the hill, which nowadays I would need because I've got knee injuries.
Was there ever any discussion about like tennis courts or anything like that? I know there's a pool. I'm just surprised, and I've been surprised this whole time. I just want to ask now.
A tennis court?
Yeah, I'm just surprised there isn't any.
No, there'll be yard games in the courtyard. That's what the green area is. There will be yard games like bocce balls and things like that. But tennis courts, we actually on a project put in a volleyball court, but we didn't actually end up making it a volleyball court because everybody was always worried about the noise and and things like that, so.
Okay, I was just curious.
Active seniors are playing pickleball.
Well, I was gonna say that was my next thing too. Was you use pickleball on tennis courts, so I'm surprised it's not there. But I've also heard people complain about the noise too.
Well, we're going to have a lot of amenities that they want. That's why we hired people out of Dallas that have told us all the things that you don't really think about. Obviously, I'm thinking about it because me getting out of chairs is not as easy as it used to be. So I'm going to be the expert on what type of chairs we should put in. Yes, please. You might need to zoom out a little bit. And I put in the other elevation, which is the elevation. This really is a decent change because where you see the sign is actually the stair, tower, and the elevator. And one of the things we're looking for is, and we haven't created a logo or official name for this yet, so I can't do that yet. But if you come around that curve, there's a beeline through the trees that hits this pretty well. And so we wanted the ability to have an identity image. In the last one we did, it was a circle with a leaf in it because it was 225 sycamore. So it was a nice logo and character element. So I wanted to point out to you that we're looking to do something kind of in that area because it lines up quite nicely with the alignment as people come straight down Shawnee Mission Parkway to identify it. Again, this is the first two levels is the garage. We've got garage doors that are going to cover the trash and the dock area. Off to the right, you see the access to the upper level deck as well. So there's direct access to each level, one from Shawnee Mission Parkway, one from the other. And those are for residents, and they're will be secured and gated as well. Yes, ma'am. And these are just the images just to refresh. Obviously, this is Shawnee Mission Parkway, and do the next one as well. This is an idea. You can kind of see the courtyard. This is not quite updated yet with the site model because it's a little bit steeper getting into it on this side than it is showing today. And next, please. And the last is obviously the view that's basically from the driveway that's coming up. We think it's a wonderful project. We think we've tried really, really hard, and we do appreciate working with staff to try and comply with everything. And if you have any questions for us, we're happy to stand to answer them.
Thank you. Do you have any
So,
questions?
I wanted to ask, these large window wall areas, you say you've never done that kind of thing before?
Not the outside screens, no.
Oh, with outside screens?
No, they've always been been an internal deck. Kim, you might go up one. I think the back ones kind of show it. Well, that one does. No, it doesn't. Okay. Normally what we'd have is we'd just have an interior deck, and there'd be a deck, and there wouldn't be a screen. What we've done is, and it always kept kind of the interior profile, because that shape of that space is basically like a diamond top of a diamond. Mm-hmm. We've actually squared it off, so there's quite a bit more room there than normal. All there would typically would be a 5 or 6 foot balcony out in front of the facet of the diamond. We squared that off. We also worked to push the wall out more, and they've specifically said they want big glass walls inside there so they can open it so it can be almost like a four-season type room. And we do see those being very valuable, but a lot of it had to do with the image they wanted for the building and what they wanted to look like from the street, too.
So that's a 2-story screened-in porch.
No, it's one. There's 2 levels there that you're seeing. So.
Oh, so it's divided at the horizontal mullion?
Yeah, and it's a little, the rendering model is a little deceptive because it's showing the shadows coming through all the way through, and they didn't put a floor in there to stop.
Okay, so it won't.
There was a floor there.
That person on the lower level won't have the vaulted ceiling in that area.
No, it'll be a floor system, about a foot and a half thick. So.
Okay. Now, will the courtyard areas along 55th, will they be fenced off?
What we've talked about doing is putting a fence there and a gate, but the gates won't be locked. It's designed to make it kind of exclusive, but there's not going to be any locks there. The gates that are going to, and it's no different, but the gates that'll be along the KU Park side will have fobs on them and gates to make sure for security. And the other thing we'll also do is we usually put, all the doors will have deadbolts in case somebody wants to get cute and climb the wall, but we also put additional security devices on the doors to make sure that no one can jimmy the doors. And then the main courtyards, they'll all be secure. You won't be able to get into them unless you're a guest.
So you could get into the courtyard, but you couldn't just walk into the building. You have to have key access.
and there's gates.
Okay.
And then that's also a place too that we can do additional items like, flower gardens and let them do their own individual flower gardens or vegetable gardens or herb gardens. So, and I'm moving, excuse me.
These kind of, like the balconies on this view here and where the screened-in porches are, what is that material? Is that like supposed to look like wood, or what is that material?
Where the actual screened-in porch would be?
Yeah, like the
It'll be
brown
synthetic.
color
We
there.
wouldn't want to put, a cedar would get gray and nasty and difficult to deal with. It'll be a synthetic.
Okay.
There's a lot of synthetics products out there nowadays that we use.
Okay, that was mainly my question, is if it was natural wood, wouldn't look good for very long.
No, you wouldn't. And then just think of the maintenance of trying to get up on a 60-foot high area to try and with a ladder to clean it up. And we avoid any wood on the outside of the building from experiences on other projects. They just don't hold the paint. They fail. So we like to do things that are not going to that'll be lasting years, if not decades.
What does this view, is there any thought to how that area is going to be screened on the northwest corner, where it's sort of 4 stories above the ground, when the ground dips down?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
If you zoom out, if we were to look on this image to the left, where the building's poking
How it comes out of the ground?
and the grade is.
Yeah, there's
receding.
you might back up.
Back up, I
Yeah.
thought, yeah.
There, you're referring to that corner.
Right.
Yeah, that's an area that we will heavily plant with areas. That's actually going to be where the electrical is, because that area is coming out of the ground. So we're going to create an electrical room back in that corner and utilities. It's wild because the door that you see on there is actually at grade going through, because as it comes up, it gets to grade for the second level. But that'll be our utilities and things like that. And we'll plant like vertical green spirea and things like that there. Or not spirea, Spartan junipers, for example. They get nice and tall. So,
Yeah, it's with the residential area just across the street.
Right.
Like with that
well, the
one story
beauty
facade.
the beauty of it is that from a design standpoint, we have tucked in a 2-level parking deck into a hill that is very well disguised, and most people aren't even going to know it's there. When we've gotten up around the backside of the 55th, it's a 3-story building, and the entire 60 or 70% of the mass is pushed back another 50 or 60 or 70 feet. So the only thing you have there are those end caps. And so we think from a design standpoint, we've done a really, really good job. And of course, I'm patting myself on the back here to demask the building and make it as inviting and as comfortable as possible. Which today, compared to what's there today, this is going to be gorgeous. So
That's not a very high standard.
thanks, Ron.
Well, that's a pretty ugly building over there right now, the garage
Well,
especially.
Of the projects we've done, this one's up toward the top in terms of the quality of the design. So we've got some that are pretty nice. I mean, and obviously Locale's just up the street.
When can we pick out our unit and sign up?
I figured you were shopping earlier. You were having questions.
Well, he said the big one on the back
I
there with
know.
that wraparound deck, yeah.
Hey, I would imagine as soon as we start, because obviously our intent is to get a demo permit going fairly quickly and start, because we've got to get the utilities, we've got to get the easements vacated, we've got to get the water lines, and you can't even get a demo permit before you got to get a letter from the utility company saying they're disconnected. And it's not just disconnected from the building, it's disconnected from the pipe. And so all of that stuff, we plan on releasing the engineers to start working on that and have that done in a couple of weeks or 3 or 4 weeks and submit for permit and start that process. We're in the process of design and CDs right now, but it's going to be about a 20-month build process. But they will start. We'll do a lot more graphics and 3D imagery and stuff of each of the units, for example, and so what the amenities will look like. I mean, obviously we're not done yet, but they'll probably start leasing those things in about a year. I guess I'd leave that up to Brandon. They will, not me. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Regarding the pad site, what would that look like? Is that gonna be developed at the same time?
No.
Or is that gonna be?
No, there's no actual user looking at it or anything like that right now, but obviously, you know, they would have the druthers of something that would be compatible and usable by people that are there. I mean, obviously, there's Starbucks on that side already, so it's not gonna be another coffee shop, but there actually is, as I'm aware, I mean, there may be somebody knows it, but right now, there's nobody specifically. But a lot of times, there are so many things that are out there that don't happen. You know, when things start coming out of the ground, that's when you'll see activity.
I noticed there wasn't a sidewalk on that. Would they come out, connect those corners, or is the circulation for pedestrians just within
No, we had it in the original showing the sidewalk all the way through, but then we decided that since it's undone and we didn't want to connect to a sidewalk that's not going to be on our property, that we brought it back. But the goal would be that it would be something that would be connected for people to walk to.
Right there. Oh,
yeah,
down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, in the original, we showed a sidewalk continuing all the way around, but until we know who and what it is, and we know how they're going to park it, because it was originally thought that they would park, the building would be on the front, the parking would be on the back side of it. There would be more parking on the back side of it. But that's going to depend on who the tenant is and the size of the tenant and what it is. But
So it looked like you had a few more parking spaces in your plan than you actually needed.
only because the unit count dropped.
But
So-
would that provide parking for this future space?
Yes and no. I mean, we don't necessarily need them, but the majority of them are going to be inside the building. So most of them are secured inside the building. So there would be a limit as to what they could do, but unless there was some agreement or something. But that's so far down the road, I couldn't say what it would be or not be. So.
And just for clarification, the watershed, the applicant did submit a watershed that included that future pad, but then they revised the watershed, then they excluded that. So if a development will come, then they have to do a watershed for the site. So that's a discussion that we had with the applicant.
Yeah, we didn't want to corrupt our site by saying we get this green area. So.
Oh,
Took it
well,
out.
you've used up all the parking across in front of that site, though. That would, in some ways, that's going to have to change if somebody does
Yes.
build on that site, because they're going to have access.
Right, but we'll build that now just to have the parking through there. So.
Okay, thank you.
I guess that was my question was, if they need a sidewalk to connect those spaces to your building in the intermediate?
Pardon?
I guess that was my question, was if they needed a sidewalk to connect west to pick up those spaces.
We aren't showing one today just because we didn't want to put something in that hopefully is torn out before. You got to realize we're going to be building for 2 years, so, or 20 months. So there's anybody that comes in is going to take 5 or 6 months, not 20, to get constructed, and we wouldn't want them starting right away anyways, because there'd be a lot of work and stuff to get done first. So
To his point, though, you are putting in the parking spots, so you would have to take those out, right? I mean, it'd be nice if they got out of their car, they could walk on the sidewalk to the building instead of through the street.
well, there's two options. I mean, the parking's not necessarily needed, so we could put a temporary curb there and let them do it in the future as well, or if a sidewalk is required, I mean, obviously we'd put one in. But we didn't want to affect that area because we knew eventually it was going to change pretty. I mean, our hope is that pretty soon somebody's wanting to be there. We're next to, 300 hopefully residents that are in a captive audience. So
Life insurance salesman.
no,
Another sidewalk?
although we can't say that, but that would not be my choice. So.
Has Starbucks, have they been doing well?
As far as I know, I mean, none of us are, I'm privy to their sales, but I had to wait in line the other day when I stopped by there to get coffee on the way back from the city. So.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before us, we have 3 things that we need to discuss and make a motion on: the final development plan, the final site plan, and the plat. Is there any further discussion?
Well, it looks to me like they proposed to do this, and now they've done it. And so, we liked it then, I guess I still like it now. It looks like they've refined it a lot, made some things better. So I'm good with what they're doing.
I would agree.
Agreed.
There's no further discussion. Does someone want to make a motion? Just do them individually.
Yeah, I was gonna say the meeting must be over. Did I nod off there for a minute? Well, I would.
Wait,
you
so are
wanted
we
3
recording
separate-
still? Are we recording still?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
recording. I just closed
Okay.
out of the packet.
So you wanted 3 separate, so I make a motion that we approve the development plan as submitted, is that all I need?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who did I catch there?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
And the next one, I would make a motion that we approve the final site plan as submitted.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion passes.
I would make a motion that we approve the plat as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right. Next item of business is item 4, additional business. Set next meeting date for June 27th, 2022. I assume we have applications already?
They have till May 27th to submit, so
And so far, nothing. We have a couple of applicants. One, that's on his 3rd month, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
It's the house on Shawnee Mission Parkway. So he's close. I thought he may submit, he may not, so
Okay.
that's about it.
All right, last item is a motion to adjourn.
before you do, is there anything that, if we don't get any applications, is there anything that you would want us to be working on? Or would you prefer to have the month off?
I'd prefer to have the month off. But with that being said, we do have the list, right?
Yes.
And so maybe I don't remember what's on the list. It's a long list. So maybe going down to the next item and starting that in the next 6 months or something, we could take that taken care of.
We do have an issue regarding the driveway.
Oh, yeah, I can bring that up. Let me go to the website here.
It's been, the way the code reads and the way it's enforced is a little bit different. Public Works generated the approach where you have the 20 feet, then a transition of 10, but the code just says 20 feet and you just jog and you go down to the 16 feet. But we've been approving that 10 feet transition.
438, isn't that Haas, the graphics?
Yeah. So that needs to, I think we have to have planning commission, or we have to change it where it matches what we've been approving.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what
so
the
we-
code reads. No one's wanting to, obviously that squared off corner there isn't really conducive to people driving on their driveway, so what they're doing is they're arcing it and blending. That's how it's being applied. So we simply need to, and what Public Works has been allowing is about 10 foot from the widest point, 20 foot, to grade down into the narrower section of the drive. So we probably need to tweak the code language and the graphic on that to reflect what is
Do we want to, is there anything else on the list? Maybe you want to do a bunch of things at one time so you don't have to.
Well, you brought it up, and I will refer to a comment Commissioner Denton made at the last meeting. Our 7-minute meeting to approve a home that code. Is there any stomach for going back to allowing staff to perhaps approve new homes that meet code, all the code requirements? That is in section 15235. Any new home, that even if it meets all the code, it has to go to planning.
So we recently changed it, and we did reduce what we saw, but what I can't remember.
We did. We were looking at even minor additions, like if you went up and you changed more than 25%, you had a house, you added a second floor. If you changed 25% of a facade visible from the street, you had to go to from the street or side, I believe it said. You had to go to planning. So we did take that off.
Okay.
It really, what I found is it has eliminated some projects having to go to planning. For example, the one tonight. You weren't, the first application, you weren't looking at that because of the addition size. You were looking because on that one facade, they couldn't meet the 15% window door opening. The addition itself, you weren't evaluating because it didn't add more than 50% new footprint. Let me go to the criteria, sorry.
Yeah, and I think when we had that discussion, at first the question was, did we want to eliminate a lot of stuff, and planning commission wouldn't review it, and so we said, well, let's take a baby step.
We took a baby step, and so here
and now
are
do we
the-
want to take the next step and eliminate, or let you guys review more and eliminate some of the stuff off our plate?
That is my question. So here is the development activity in R1 that requires you guys to view it. The only thing that this doesn't reflect is on our online website that's been passed by ordinance is the solar panels. The ordinance is passed, but it's not been codified into this format. So that's what you're looking at right now. And so if we want to look at some things, I guess maybe the question, and we can go back from when this was amended, are the new homes that meet code going ahead and getting approved? Do you guys feel comfortable that staff can do this? And I realize we have some new members here, but I only brought it up because you asked and Ron made the comment at the last meeting. Why are we looking at this?
Well, it does seem like a lot of the better developers come in with a plan that's complete and does what we want it to do, and it's like, why waste their time having to wait around for a meeting? But then you never know when.
And keep in mind, we are in the background. I mean, you're getting a final submittal. It's after one or two submittals, and just like the development.
Right.
This is the third version of the final plan that you guys saw. I mean, we had the discussion with them. There were issues that we brought up, and they had to correct it.
Well,
So-
yeah, that's kind of my feeling. You guys are in the front line. You're saying, no, that doesn't come back with something better, and then to get it all approved, and then you have to ask us if it's all right. And it's like, we obviously trust you guys. And when they all are right, I mean, what else can we say? We can't say, well, I don't like your window layout. That's not an option. I don't like the way it looks. It's not an option. I mean, so it's like, if it meets the requirements, it meets the requirements.
And I would be more than happy to go back and look at the new homes in the last, I believe we made this modification before COVID. So I can go back and look at the new homes and see, was there any of the homes that got approved, was there any significant discussion? What was it about? Because that's when we want to look at changing the code, not, having it come through a site plan process and having it be discussed here at the meeting. It should go through. So I would be glad to do that. Again, even a new home, anything that they need an exception for, we've got that trigger that they have to come in.
Just out of curiosity, did this all come from the, I don't know, affectionately referred to it as the Cube home, or how did all of this come about?
I think where it came from was staff was the sheer volume of applications coming to planning because of what was triggering it, eliminating the any change to 25% of a facade. I mean, that
Gotcha.
did eliminate some applications. Did the Cube home on, I believe it's Del Mar?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That was discussed like during the last time we discussed it, so it was very fresh in everyone's mind.
And part of tackling that.
Even though we didn't like it, it still got, you know, we couldn't stop it.
Right, and I mean, it's not our decision whether we like a house or not. Like that's
Right,
not
yeah.
up to us.
And I think Commissioner Walker, who took on the initiative of defining character, because I think that's where, and we have a completely different board, or set of commissioners here. You guys all have background in, you know, architecture, real estate, engineering. That hasn't always been the case, and I think there was a little bit of a stumbling area with character, and Commissioner Walker, I thought, did a great job crafting the language that we added into the R1 section. And what stuck with me is, you know, character is the forest, style is the tree. And so you can have many architectural styles within a city. The character is, are they meeting it on massing and site situation and, you know, maybe the green space. So I think that for me really made it clear that that particular cubistic style is, you know, for your Picasso fans is wonderful. But it met all the requirements, height, setbacks, everything.
And there were actually people that were excited about it. So
It brings that San Francisco flair to Fairway, so I do like that.
I mean, there's not a lot of people raise their hands, but I saw a few people on Nextdoor say, "Yeah, I'm actually happy about it." So
And
I like that house.
It recently sold. I know one of the drawbacks was one of the homeowners that purchased it found out they couldn't put much of a fence in the yard for a dog because it was on a corner lot. And
That may be another discussion, is the fencing on a corner lot.
add it to the list. we do have like 10 things on a list. I feel like we've only done the generators and the solar panels. So there's a bunch of other stuff that city staff, council sent to us, and we need to also address.
Yes.
But yeah, these are all good things. If you want to pull together the top 2 things, and then we can work on it in the next 6 months.
I can put those on maybe a lighter meeting, you know, since everybody would like to maybe, if there's no applications, have June off. I would like it, you know, and so that's why I wanted to jump on that. Well, if we could eliminate, you know, the site plan review for new homes that meet code, that is.
But there is still 4 days, so you never know.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing.
Koenig will probably slip one right in on us.
The other thing that I see, I mean, I don't want to put all the onus on you guys. I mean, it's kind of like if an applicant comes in and you take one look at it and you go, I don't like this, you can say, well, I don't think the planning commission would ever approve it. And so it gives you a bad guy to point at, as opposed to Kim getting the bad name of.
Well, my feeling is I'm looking at it, and they're making the changes, and then it's coming back, I'm looking at it again, and preparing the staff report to you guys.
There is a fair amount of work that goes into preparing this and the packets and everything when it meets code. I will tell you, we had a recent addition that did not need to go to planning commission in Reinhardt. I don't remember the address, but the initial renderings, it was like, no, that this is so disconnected from the original ranch-style house. We made them change materials. We made them change windows. It was like, this will not fly. and we didn't feel it met the code. And they did make a lot of changes.
Well, see, it's kind of a two-way street too with, this is a new group of approvers here, and you're established reviewers.
I'm not.
If things, well, you've been around a long time, if things would switch and you would get lucky enough to retire, and we get some new person in here,
And that's where.
and then they might not have that same feel for what we liked or didn't like, and then we'd be sitting here, man, why didn't we get a chance to look at that?
That's where I'd like the code to, crack the code language so there isn't that much interpretation.
But then it gets, yeah.
It's just like
It's a lot of
corner
work.
fences. How do you
Yeah.
how do you tie that down? I mean,
Well, I mean, you can build a building closer to the side street, but you can't build a fence closer to the side or matching in line with the house. You're penalized, I mean,
You're gonna.
and there is an application maybe coming to you
Two,
guys.
now it's gonna go to a BZA, it's gonna be a variance.
But to Ron's point, maybe someone in your position may not do as great of a job following the code.
Oh, Fairway will always hire.
But I mean, so
you'll pick your.
we are a little bit also like the last stop.
Yeah.
If that person wasn't doing a good job, we could still step in and say, hey, this doesn't look right.
Right.
What else are we gonna do on Mondays? You guys will get the night off.
Ron, how long have you been on the commission?
I can't remember. It's over
Like
25 years.
Yeah. So Ron's been spending every Monday, once a month.
My wife just loves Mondays because
All right.
All right, we can, yes.
I don't think we've had a motion to adjourn.
I would make a
Go ahead.
somebody started to make it a minute ago, and she said, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.